Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. How are you? Have a nice weekend, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And I did a story on Nancy Pelosi, her husband, Paul Pelosi, yesterday, early in the day. So, right when the story was breaking, it didn't seem very suspicious at the time that this guy was able to break into the third in line to the presidency's house in San Francisco. Where were all the guards? Where were the security personnel? And why was Paul Pelosi in his underwear along with the guy? Some of those details we did not have at the time, but now we do. And there's a third person that was also in the house, who did not belong at the house either. There's a lot of speculation swirling around this mystery, and of course, to cover up, I'm sure it's on its way from Speaker Pelosi and other in a Democrat circles in order to try to cover up this. I don't know what this is, and we're going to explore what this actually is here in a moment. So let's go and dive into it a little bit. Here we have Paul Pelosi, who whole situation, don't forget, just earlier this year, he was busted for driving drunk running into another individual's car. We didn't get a chance to see whether or not there was a payoff there, so he wouldn't be sued or anything like that. However, there was a lot of suspicious things swirling around that whole situation, which we finally got more and more info down the road when things cooled down for Pelosi. However, now we have this one hitting right on the heels of that one just wrapping up, and it must really infuriate, I believe, the Democrat Party, as they are being nationally embarrassed right now. They're trying to go out there and say no Republicans are allowed to come make fun of this. Well, not really make fun of this. But we do need to answer is that like the situation where a Democrat sociopath shot Steve Scalise in a baseball field, tried to kill other members of Congress. It's not like a deranged lunatic of the left attacking Rand Paul numerous different times, not only his neighbor, but Antifa. And the streets after the RNC nomination. And, of course, there's numerous others, where the violence from the left continues, the assassination attempts on Brett Kavanaugh, Steve Leto, and of course, Clarence Thomas, and because of the Roe v. Wade, and all these other things that Democrats pretend never happened, and they use their minions in the media to gaslight Americans to tell them that has never occurred. Have we know better than that? So let's kind of dive into this story. Well, we over here on Gateway Pundit, and it says, did mystery third person open the door for police at the Pelosi house? If so, who? Yes, lots of questions need to be answered. So let's kind of dive in here. It says the San Francisco PD released some info regarding Paul Pelosi's arrest, but some very important information that has been left out to date. The San Francisco police held their first press conference on the event earlier yesterday, and didn't mention how the police got into the house, but somehow they did come out during the second interview to police mentioned that following, as we reporting this morning. According to Chief Scott, the police officers arrived at the front door of the Pelosi home. The door was opened by someone inside, not a worker, because they would have named a worker of the close. These are security personnel of the Pelosi. No, someone, they said. Political made a statement that the police were led inside by an unknown person. This is all over their debt. Service commented on this as well. He says officers arrived at the house, knocked on the front door, and were led inside by an unknown person. Exactly. Now people are wondering if there was a third person involved in the incident. Who was the third person? Just froze for political here. It says officers arrived at the house, knock on the front door, and were led inside by unknown person. They discovered DePepe and Pelosi struggling for a hammer after they instructed to drop the weapon. Scott said DePepe took the hammer and violent attack Pelosi. There's likely is information that shows what happened. The house and the police likely had cams on the situation. What is the truth? Who is there? A third person? Viva Free says apparently there is a body cam footage, so it will be clear if the person who left the cops and was leader Pelosi or Pepe. It will show also if both Pelosi and Pepe were indeed in their underwear, if it will also show if both were indeed holding hammers. Yeah, so what the hell is really going on? Was Paul Pelosi engaged in some type of deviant sex act? With this individual, of course, we know the depravity of the Democrat Party and lots of secrets of politicians. We know about the secret at parties they'd like to hold in D.C. So would that be a stretch of the imagination to link Paul Pelosi into some type of degenerate behavior at the Pelosi house? His wife was not fair. And apparently just nudist dude, who of course is all about gay pride and everything else like that. So why not? That is a question that I think the public should have answered. And of course the police are saying this is a private matter. We'll need, and this is some big news, I came across of an MSNBC panelists absolutely panicking over the midterms. Check it out. Everyone listen to this. And then you see a woman who's raising 4 kids on one. And you go, nothing else matters to her. There's no argument other than guess what, we're going to figure out a way to make bread more affordable to you. I mean, there's just what you know, when it's about survival, when it's about these issues that just they can't live, then you can scare them and say it could get worse, they could take your healthcare away. I mean, that's a strategy to go. But if she is representative of a big part of the populace, and she is, and now let's even factor in people, we're seeing their IRAs, not like that, necessarily. But who's seen their raw IRAs go down by 20-25%? It's really tough. And I've come on the show and talked a lot about that. You got to scare people and make it about the Republicans that are crazy people. But even with the pending crazy, when you can't afford to buy the stuff that you were able to buy a year or 2 or 3 years ago, it's tough sledding. I hate to be negative many over here. I don't even know what the hell that means. But I am really scared about a bloodbath. 10 days from now. Okay, I know what is it alluding to. There's basically what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You may be familiar with this. The 20th century psychologist Abraham Maslow, he created a model that prioritizes our innate human needs. So it begins with foundational physiological needs: air, food, water, shelter, fire. And then once we attain that, then we can fulfill the next set of innate needs, which are safety needs. So security from threats, health needs, resources, employment, and then one is able to go to the next level, which are relational needs. So that involves, of course, friendship, intimacy, and on and on and on. So what these panelists are recognizing here is that this upcoming midterm election is more and more centering on the foundational level of Maslow's hierarchy. A single mom with 4 kids is worried about food and fuel. She's worried about hunger and heat this coming winter, and all the Democrats have to offer in response are a bunch of meaningless slogans like, "We need to save our democracy." And, it's not really a recession, and inflation actually can be good for you. And then this fellow goes up the hierarchy needs. Okay, so then there are people out there who can feed their families and heat their homes, but then they look at their IRAs, they look at their 401(k)s or investments. And you see, that's the next level of the needs hierarchy. And they too are starting to freak out as they see those numbers dissipate. And again, what are they hearing in response? They're hearing the Democrats say, well, January 6th, and Trump is the single greatest threat to democracy and the like, even though he's not running for anything. So this messaging campaign by the Democrats is an absolute disaster. And that is the precise conclusion of this ultra-leftist panel at MSNBC. And again, we have studies on how midterms play out in correlation to these hierarchy needs, whether these needs are being met or not met, and that always shows up in terms of presidential approval. Generally speaking, if the economy is going well, that means then these innate psychological needs are being met. And therefore at least at the fundamental levels, physical safety and like, and therefore the president's approval ratings will be above 50%. However, if people were facing the kind of economic fallout that we're facing today, it's no surprise that we're seeing Biden's approval and King into the 30s. And I've mentioned this before, but Harry Olson over at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, he just published a fascinating study, where he analyzed all the various midterms of the past. So this is going back decades, right? And what he found was a fixed common factor in all of them, and every single midterm, the results were directly related to the approval rating of the president, every single midterm, including the ones that went great for the sitting president, like the 2002 midterms, where the Republicans actually gained seats in Congress. Bush's approval was through the roof. It was just months after 9/11. And what's so fascinating about the study is also concluded that of all these things that we give attention to, the quality of the candidate right that kept coming up with Herschel Walker, the amount of money that's being spent on the campaign, the amount of media time and attention, whatever it is. All of that ultimately, none of that mattered. According to the historical data, none of it mattered. What ultimately matters is presidential approval, and presidential approval is inextricably linked to these hierarchy needs. In addition, another major indicator is right track, wrong track bulls. Again, midterms consistently play out, in accordance with voters' attitudes towards the direction of the country. And unfortunately, for Biden, the Democrats, the latest right track wrong track polls are utterly devastating. We're talking anywhere from 70 to 80% of the public thinks the nation is going on the wrong track. You know, I know duh. And so what we consistently see play out here is that voters overwhelmingly side with the candidates who represent opposition to this, right? That's the way these voters express their dissatisfaction with how things are going. They vote for the opposition candidate. And again, they don't care who that candidate is. So when it comes to the two major indicators that are most determinative for determining how a midterm election plays out, the Democrats are screwed. I mean, they're getting killed. They're getting absolutely pummeled. And that's been corroborated by the generic ballots. So when people are asked, who do you plan to vote for Congress in the upcoming election, the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate, right, that's his generic ballot. Every single poll that's been coming out over the last week, virtually every single one shows Republicans with a very significantly. The latest Rasmussen has Republicans up 7. Right. And the reason, of course, is that the president's approval rating is causing independents to side with Republicans upwards by 20 points. And that's just too big for most Democrats to overcome. So there you go. MSNBC is flipping out that we're about to see an electoral slaughter just days from now, and I can tell you, I for one will be relatively reveling in the liberal tears. And it seems as though Donald Trump is back. I think a lot of people can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I got for you guys though. Thanks for watching,